Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the September 27th meeting of the Library, St. Joseph County Public Library Board. It is 4:15 and I will call the meeting to order. Let me call to determine a quorum. I see that Sally has not yet arrived, so please announce that you are here and you received your materials. Marvin?
Yes, I received the materials.
Alan?
Yes, I'm here and I received my material.
Terry?
Here and received.
Anne?
Here and received the materials.
John? And I am also here and have received my materials. You all received minutes from the previous board meeting held on August 23rd. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I will call for a vote. Marvin?
Aye.
Alan?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
Anne?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And I also approve. They are approved. Next, we will move to the director's report.
And Jenny is going to kick that off with a look at the statistics.
I feel like I should sing everyone a song, but instead I'll talk to you about statistics. So you got the August 2021 report, and as you can see, there's a lot of similarities from the past. So we're kind of holding steady with a lot of our physical circulation, digital circulation, gate count. And I think, again, it's not going to be until main library reopens that we really see a shuffling. And also as things open or close and those changes that are occurring, we'll start to see hopefully a more consistent pattern as we move forward. One thing I would like to note, I'm going to recall Nancy, where she always had one thing to note in her report. So I'm always going to have one thing to note. So one thing to note is that Wi-Fi usage continues to increase across the system. And we're also seeing that at almost all of our branches, which just shows one of the ways, in addition to checking out materials, that people continue to use their local neighborhood library branch. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. In the fund report, which is the next thing you have in your packet, our fund balances are in very good shape for this point in the year. We're going to be using library funds in LRF and the general fund to finish out the main library project. So you'll see those balances go down by year end, but we actually want that to happen to a certain extent. You also have a copy of an article from the first issue of ANTA. That's a magazine published by the Notre Dame School of Architecture. And the final article in that publication is about the libraries project. So you have it, we photocopied it for you. I just wanted to make sure that you got a look at what they said. And then a brief update on the main library project. We were able to complete the punch list for the first floor of the main library. So the contractors will be working to sort of come up to speed on that. Most of the work right now is taking place in the annex. The library is pretty well done, or at least all the big things are pretty well done. In the annex, there's a lot of trim going up on the second and third floors. Carpeting is getting ready to go in on the third floor. Studio 304 is getting wall and ceiling paint. So the spaces are finally looking like they're going to be, finished out. It's still a construction zone, but it's getting there. They're also working on the floors of the annex. Over the next couple of weeks, the terrazzo will be getting a first grind before that final polish. And I don't know, I think when we took you through last, the terrazzo was not polished to the high, beautiful sheen that it is right now in main library. That looks great. And they're into that process in the annex. The crews have also started working in the courtyard. Fagley is working on the irrigation system, and they're setting the pergola posts so you can kind of see where the pergola is going to go in when you're looking out there. We have been talking to the team about the things that won't be done in time for the grand opening, and most of them are in the annex space. There's nothing that's going to keep us from opening, but there are some things that won't be totally finished by the time we get there. There's a delay in doors that we're working through. Most of the wrapped panels won't be installed in the ballroom and the auditorium. And we're not sure the courtyard is going to be completely finished, but I should have a better idea of that by the October meeting, right? And Anthony is on the call. Yes, we're talking several times a week about all those things. The notice of our November 14th opening went out in this issue of Unfold, and we were able to get it into the water bill. So it also went out to 44,000 households in the community. So it is, yes, we're not walking it back now. It's out there. We're opening November 14th. And that's all I have.
I was about to say, what if 44,000 people come to that opening?
Wouldn't that be a great thing to do?
It is a
Great
great
problem.
thing. We can fill them in. Yes, that would be very good.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about what the opening would look like. I'm assuming that that's what you're working on.
We are working on the opening. We're working on the move. We're working on the finishes. We're working on a lot. I keep calling this the sprint, and it really does feel like it. There's a big push.
Thank you. Any questions for Deb?
I have one.
Sure.
And it's not about the library building, but it's about an email I got about the State Library Association or something. They're looking for members. Did you see that?
I didn't. I get things from I wonder if it was the Indiana Library Federation. Do you think?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I get those mailings, but I don't remember seeing. Oh, they're looking for board members.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Are you interested?
I don't know. Hopefully not, but I have enough to do. I'm curious as to what it's, how does that affect us?
The Indiana Library Federation was a rock during COVID. Their executive director met with library directors every week, and they were a lifeline to give us legal advice that, we still have our attorney, we talked to Jim, but they also were directing a lot of the things that we were doing. They were an advocate for us at the state legislature level. They were an advocate for us with PPE. But about 3 months ago, the organization kind of fell apart. Their executive director left, the assistant left. They're down to one person right now. And so they're hiring a new executive director, or actually they're bringing on an interim. And so library directors and board members all across the state are kind of filling in the gaps. They have their annual conference coming up in November. We're doing maybe 5 different presentations at that conference, 5 sessions. But it's in a little bit of a mess right now. And I hope they get back on track.
Is it going to be remote?
No, it's in person. They considered canceling, but the balance of what they would lose if they canceled on all their deposits versus what they might, and they did a survey with the membership to see who was coming. So they've decided, it looks like they're going ahead, and it's the week after our opening. So not too many of this group Ron is presenting and Lace is presenting. The rest of us are going to just like lie in our beds, I think.
I guess the question I have is there any representation from this area in that organization? Okay.
One of the board members, New Carlisle director, is on the board. The Lake County director is on board. Because it's a federation, they have school libraries, university libraries, and public libraries. So it is large.
Okay.
But yeah, there is some local representation.
Okay.
Deb, is where do they meet normally, their board?
I believe they meet I think they've been meeting remote for a lot of COVID, but they normally meet in Indianapolis.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to accept the director's report?
So move.
Second.
I will call a roll. Marvin,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Terry,
Aye.
Anne,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and I also approve. Thank you, Deb.
Thank you.
We'll move on to personnel changes.
This month's list is larger than you normally see, but it reflects a number of promotions and transfers around the system as we get ready for main libraries reopening. We still have, I'm looking at Kara and Sarah, I think it's around 20 vacancies that we're hoping to fill in the next month and a half. But those are all across the system as we move people around. So I just want to mention 3 key positions that we did using in-house staff. Carter Lubowski, formerly at River Park, is the new teen librarian. Kara Pauley, formerly the branch manager at North Liberty, is the new early literacy librarian. These are new positions at Maine they're going to have some significant responsibilities. And Amy Barnard, formerly the youth assistant at German, is the new reader services librarian. So those are all promotions for them. We're moving them up. And then we're going to have some outside positions that we also have to fill.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the human resource changes?
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? With that, I will call the roll. Marvin,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Terry,
Aye.
Anne,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and I also approve.
Christine, we missed the bill list.
We always miss the bill list. Let's look at the. Oh, I just jumped right over it. I'm sorry, Kelly. I usually just miss the gift log, not the whole bill list. Okay.
Hey, you will notice on the bill list that we had about $2.7 million in bills and claims paid this month, which is larger than average. But 1.5 million of that was construction expenses. And about 150,000 was for subscription services for digital, such as Overdrive. So after those are subtracted out, the rest are just the regular bills of utilities, etc. Any questions?
Any questions? Hearing none, I would go for a motion to approve the bill list.
So moved.
Second.
Marvin,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Terry,
Aye.
Anne,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
I also approve. And we did get 3 gifts. Does anybody want to mention the 3 gifts or?
Kelly, do you want to take that too? Or Lisa? Actually, that should be Lisa. Sorry.
Lisa. So there was 5,000 from Hammerschmidt, 1,500 from Christy Bowditch, and 1,000 from John F. Bruce.
We are getting ready to do an annual appeal. We're working on that letter right now. And when is that going out, Lisa? It's out already. Sorry. She's efficient.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve accepting our gifts?
So moved. Up. Second.
Moved and seconded. I will go through the roll. Marvin,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Terry,
Aye.
Anne,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and I also approve. Okay, well, we've gone through personnel changes, haven't we? The next item, I think, is reports of special library board committees. And to my knowledge, no special library board committee meetings were held. So there's no report. Is there any unfinished business? No? Well, then we can move into new business and we can ask Antonia to talk about our change orders for the main library project.
Thank you so much for the introduction. So we had a few changes. We'll go through the list that you guys have in your packet. The first one we have is for BOFO. This is for the setback flashing. Last month we approved an increase from Zolkowski. So this is the credit back from their base contract work for $1,192. For EJ White, there were 2 changes. The first one was a credit for the floor drain and piping for $692, a credit of $692. And then we also utilize their allowance for the SmartBox ADA Lav. So we changed the sink in that space in order to fit the ADA compliance, the pocket for that area. So the overall cost for EJ White was a credit of $692. For golf, there were 3 changes. 2 of them related to their allowance. We did max out their allowance that we had, and so there is a add of $35,100 $173. And then there is a replacement cost for the ATT tile that was damaged by the MEP trades. If you're noticing, you will also see that Herman and Getz has a credit for those items as well. So that overall cost does not hit our contingency for $5,711. So the other trades include Shamba and TPC Technologies were the other two trades that were related to that ad, and they have subsequent credits associated with that work for an overall cost to golf of $40,884. For green demo, this is the mechanical time and material work, which is a back charge to them for a overall cost of $990. For Herman and Getz, there were 5 changes. One for the frosted light covers for $614. These are light covers that are in the lobby space at the renovation area. So it creates a less stark appearance when you're able to see the lights that are going around the trim at the openings in the lobby space. We had some additional exit signs by Captain Fleming's. This is for the fire department for $3,224. There were an owner allowed overtime to Herman and Getz for $4,826. The replacement ACT tile to Herman and Getz for a credit of $2,523. And then we also maxed out their allowance, and that the overage amount that we have for them is $14,899 for an overall cost to Herman and Getz for $21,040. For Larson Danielson, there was one cost. This is for the scaffolding that was needed inside of the renovation space between the first floor and second floor for $6,285. There is 2 costs for Larson Danielson for their millwork package for the wood valance at the FW Light. This is on the second floor for $2,740. And then there was a punch list ad, which included some additional trim work from them for $467 for an overall cost to Larson Danielson of $3,207. MCI, Mechanical Concepts Incorporated, had one change, which was time and material work for $18,808.07. For Ostaban, we had 2 changes, one for the allowance painting touch-ups, and then also for their punch list changes, which included changing paint on the second floor. Both of the allowances were used in this area, so you'll see that there's a 0 cost change to them. For Robert Henry, we had 1 change. This is for the screen. This is for one of our RFIs for the screen fence and curb elevation change for $576. Shamba had a credit back charge for replacing the ACT tile for a credit of $930. TPC had 1 change for the replacement of the ACT tile, the back charge for $2,258. And Zolkowski had one change for the courtyard fence detail for $3,062. This is regarding ASI 35 for an overall change of $87,800.07.
Thank you, Antonia. Any questions? Well, then let me run through the summary of the change orders. We have a credit of $1,192 for BOFO waterproofing systems. EJ White has a credit, is crediting us with $692. Goff, an additional charge of $40,884. Green Demolition, a credit of $990. Herman and Getz, a charge of $21,040. Larson Danielson, a charge of $6,285. Larson Danielson Millwork, a charge of $3,207. Mechanical Concepts, Inc., a charge of $18,808.07. Osterbahn and Sons, I have nothing, zero charge. Robert Henry Corporation, a charge of $576. Shambaugh and Sons, a credit of $930. TPC Technologies, a credit of $2,258. And Zolkowski Construction, a charge of $3,062 for a total change charge of $87,800.07. I would entertain a motion to approve the change orders.
So move.
Second.
I will call the roll. Marvin,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Terry,
Aye.
Ann,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and I also approve. The next we have, next on the agenda is our 2022 budget hearing. And before Kelly gives the report, I would like to have somebody motion to open our public hearing. Do I hear a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
I hear a motion and a second. Let me call a roll. Marvin,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Terry,
Aye.
Ann,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and I also approve. So Kelly will give her report. We will have it open for any responses from the public. And at that point, we'll close the meeting. Kelly?
Start with what is exactly a public budget? It's a spending request that we're going to make. Of course, the board's response to maintain library programs and services. We put those together and develop a budget, which we will then submit after adoption to the Department of Local Government Finance to finally finalize it and set that budget. What are our budgeted funds? I always like visuals when we talk about this. So if you think of our operating fund, general fund, and LIRF, which is the Library Improvement Reserve Fund, is kind of buckets where we can take money from and expend it. And then the debt service, and this is my, can't hardly see it up there in the right-hand corner, my agricultural background. The debt is sort of like a silo. You can only spend out of that fund monies for repayment of debt, whether it's short-term debt or long-term debt, such as general obligation bonds. Primary uses of the general fund are pretty much everything: salary, wages, utilities, repairs, supplies, maintenance, anything that we need to purchase for programming, books, digital resources. And the revenue comes from local property taxes, local income taxes, donations, grants can be put into there. We can also keep separate funds for those as well. Fees and investment earnings, although those are pretty pathetic at 0.1%, but we do get a little bit of investment earnings. The library improvement reserve is just a transfer fund where we transfer monies from our operating fund into that. And we can use that for building improvements, equipment, capital outlays. Our cash balances that we try to keep, we look at our rainy day fund. Our cash reserves are attempting to keep 6 months of expenses in there, so we don't have to do any short-term borrowing. And the reason we look at 6 months is because our property tax increments come in bulk in June and December from the payments that are made in May and November. We can get a little bit of money based from what the auditor receives, the county auditor receives from payments throughout the year, but those are less than what the bulk of the payments are in those months. So we try to keep 6 months of cash balances. This is probably the most confusing part of developing the budget, are what are those tax caps? You might have heard of them called circuit breaker credits. Tax caps are in the Indiana Constitution, and they've been there for about 12 years now. It's the limit of the amount of the property taxes that all units of local government can charge. So if you think of the taxes that are collected as a pie, then each person gets, each entity, schools, townships, libraries, et cetera, get a piece of that pie. The circuit breaker then is reducing that slice of the pie that each group gets. So in our state constitution, that cap is 1% on residential, 2% on farmland and retail, and 3% on commercial. There are also TIF districts, which are tax increment financing, that do that. If you have a referendum, that is outside the tax caps for them, but they do fall under the, they don't pay any taxes for anything that's in a TIF district unless it's referendum, and then they do have to pay those taxes. So it gets a little complicated, but we keep that in mind because that's going to reduce our ability to levy. So this is the cumulative effect of the circuit breakers for the library since 2017. Now, remember, this has been in effect since 2010, so it's been a little bit longer than that, but you can see where the circuit breaker tax credit has kind of ebbed and flowed over the years, and our estimate is 4.5 million for 2022. So we're at $22 million in losses since 2017 from circuit breaker, to keep that in perspective. Our advertised budget, as we mentioned at the last board meeting, is $1,489,097 for the debt service, with an advertised rate of just under 3 cents. That is a reduction from the current levy due to lower payments in debt service. It's always nice to say we have a reduction. Our advertised budget for the general fund is $21,375,000 with an advertised rate of 0.3541, 35 cents, about 35.5 cents, with an advertised levy of 16 million. And that was increased by the maximum growth quotient, which is a formula that's supplied to us by the Department of Local Government Finance. But it is important to keep in mind that that advertised levy will be reduced by approximately $4 million in circuit breaker. So we will receive around 12 million, give or take. Estimated revenue, this is just a graph so you can see where our revenue comes from by fund. And as you can see, the general fund is predominantly from property taxes, as is debt service. LRF, we do not plan to transfer any into that, so there is no revenue for 2022 estimated. Expenses. You can see that the bulk of the expenses for the general fund are salaries and wages, and then followed by books and other media, and services and charges. Those services and charges have to do with digital services, a lot of the electronic formats. So we are spending our money on people and programs out of general fund. And debt service, of course, is all debt. And LRF is budgeted for some capital outlays, including equipment. Yes, sir.
I noticed on this slide down at the bottom, it says the second, under salary and wages at the bottom, it says communication and transpo. Transpo, is that the bus service?
No, it's transportation. I just ran out of room.
Oh, okay, no problem. Okay. I was clarifying. Thank you, I'm sorry.
Not a great abbreviation.
that's-
Next slide. So debt service, we don't anticipate any tax anticipation warrants, and those are short-term borrowing based on any sluggishness in property tax revenue. Like last year in 2020, when property tax payments were delayed, some units had to take kind of short-term borrowing out in order to meet obligations, but we don't anticipate any of that unless something weird comes up, which happened in 2020. And no new debt issuance do we anticipate in 22. Our challenges ahead, uncertainty about funding. That's always uncertain. You never know what will happen with property tax values. You don't know what will happen with changes in local income tax when other entities decide. If tax caps explode, we just don't know. And we'll be exploring capacity, equipment, and facility needs for the future through facility studies and some things like that long-term. Our plans for the future do continue to build the rainy day fund reserve. Currently, we could go into binding review on our budget if we have more than 150% of cash balance in our funds, but rainy day does not count towards that. So we want to make sure that if we need emergency funds, that they are kept in the rainy day fund. And we'll continue, as always, to review our funding to make sure that we have sustainability in our programs, services, staff, and facilities. I just like this guy balancing on the coin. So we'll continue to demonstrate good stewardship of library funds and for making sure that we are only taxing what we need to tax. Are there any questions about what we're looking for in the 22 budget? Yes, sir.
Okay. I was a music major, so this is going to be a mathematical question. That it seems like we're talking about $1 per person in taxes for the library. Am I right?
Say that again, Marvin. I didn't.
It's like with the tax rate that you've got, it's like $1 per person. You said, I'm trying to figure out how much a household would pay in tax towards the library.
It depends on what the assessed valuation is on your property. If you take the whole pie, everything that we get, and divide it by the number of people in our taxing district, that's what we base our fee cards on. So it's about $80, $85, thank you, a person.
Per person, okay.
Per person. But it could be a lot more than that, or it could be a lot less than that, depending on how your property is.
Okay, so it's St. Joseph County.
It is, but we only survey townships out of the 13 who pay actually taxes toward us.
We don't serve Mishawaka, for example.
Right. We serve them through reciprocal borrowing, but they don't pay taxes to support us.
So is Granger, where I live, is that part of it?
Clay Township Granger is, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So it's just,
Harris Township Granger is not. That goes to Mishawaka.
oh,
So there is the layer of property taxes that we will charge. So if you have a $100,000 home divided by 100 to get the number for your denominator, and you take that times your rate is what you'll pay, but it can't exceed 1% of your value, your assessed valuation, because of the tax caps for the library.
That's in total taxes.
Total
That's not just
taxes.
library tax.
But
That's
then
total tax.
also we collect excise taxes for commercial vehicles and motor vehicles, and because we have the airport too, there's some excise taxes from that. We also get local income tax based on folks that work and live in St. Joe County and pay local income taxes. So
So
it's hard to say how much each individual
Okay.
person pays depending on whether they might live here and they pay property taxes, but they might work in another county and not pay, but their local income taxes based on where they live, but they could have a reciprocal in another county. They could work in Michigan. It varies to say how much each individual taxpayer will pay.
But it's no more than one.
That's 1% of your
Of
assessed valuation
the
in total property
tax,
tax. That's
right.
just not what we get. That's
Mhm.
total property tax.
Oh, okay.
So if you live in the city of South Bend, you'll pay taxes for the city, you'll pay taxes for the county, you'll pay
Mhm.
taxes for the library, you'll pay taxes for the school, et cetera, et cetera. You have $100,000 home after your deductions, your total tax bill can't exceed $1,000 outside it. The school referendum is outside tax cap, so that's
Right.
beside the point. But each one of those taxing entities can't equal more than $1 out of each, $100 of assessed valuation, $1,000 total. So it's complicated. And
Those are
it's not
music
just
majors.
music majors that don't understand it.
I-
It is
I'm like, I
not.
don't get it still, but it's all right. Okay. I'm just trying to figure out, but to me, it seems like it's a small amount that people are asking for, that people get to the library. And I
It is
think
a- it is
that's,
a small amount.
and I'm wondering if if people know that, or do they know what their tax bill goes for?
On the back of your tax bill, it is broken down to what every entity gets. So you know how much the library gets and how much the schools get. And like Kelly said, referendum is outside of the tax
Right.
cap. So you're going to pay that no matter what. That was voted on. Yeah, you can see it in your property tax bill.
You can also go to dlgf.in.gov and you can
Okay.
key in
You can
and
search your
get your.
property.
I just give it to it comes out of my mortgage. I don't look at it.
Oh, okay.
That's how it's paid. So the bill comes and says, do not pay. I'm like, 'cause it's already been paid. So, but I think I'm learning that when people know more about what they're paying for, they tend to be more interested in what it is, particularly the library.
That's a good point.
That if they know that this amount is for the library, it's a small amount, but look at what you get for what you're paying for. That creates a scenario where you could do some sort of public relations work, that might be helpful.
Does the library get a particular percentage of each household's taxes, or how does that work?
It all comes down to what the total tax rate is for that individual taxpayer. So let's say, for example, your tax bill would be $1,200, but your cap is $1,000. That $200 is prorated among each of the entities based on the percentage that they would charge. So schools lose the most because they tax the most, and it goes so forth. And so we get a percentage less of what that is, but no, you can't say each individual there's a tax rate, but it depends on what your total rate is, because if you live outside the city zoning area, you wouldn't pay city taxes, but you pay county taxes. If you live in the city, you pay city and county. So it's layers upon layers. So it's hard to say. We can do a typical taxpayer on a typical house, but to say what each person, it's really hard to just say this is the average.
So I'm sorry. So the controversy that was going on that you were going to the meetings about?
That was about local income tax to fund the 911 center. And
Okay.
if you, in Kelly's budget that you have, did you reduce that budget by that amount?
Yes, we
Yeah.
reduced it by because they're taking 3 years to get us to the total loss, but we did reduce it by what that loss is estimated to be in 22. So you
Started out not doing that. That's why I asked, because our rep said, don't put it in because they haven't passed it yet. Well, they have. So it's in the budget.
So.
So where
we-
we used to get maybe 2.4 million in local income taxes, and that varies too by the amount of local income taxes that are collected and then redistributed. We're going to lose over 3 years about 600,000 of that. So that's what we have been talking about for months.
So annually, after 3 years, there'll be a $600,000 less. And as you saw in the slide, the circuit breaker, as the properties do increase in the assessed valuation, which that's going up, the impact is getting a little bit less, but it's still maintaining that $3.5 to $4 million in loss. So you couple that with the income tax. So
Part
we
of
have to
what-
be.
Part of what impacted us was our own bond issues. Because there's circuit breaker that applies to the bond issues as well. That is coming directly out of our general fund rather than a bond fund. You can't short a bond payment. So it's coming out of general. So where you saw that sort of big leap in 2020, that's the result, I think, mostly of the bond issues that we have. If we didn't have anything outstanding in debt, some of that would go away, but we'd also be able to fund less in the main library project.
And it's also important to note that if we don't, this is kind of where the circuit breaker pits entities against each other, because if we stopped issuing bonds and didn't do that work or facilities and said, okay, we freed up 3 cents on the taxes, somebody else is going to grab that. It's not going to be all of a sudden taxpayers have 3 cents less to pay. They're just going to go up higher on theirs. It's just going to impact them less than it does us. That's why bond issuances have to have kind of layers of approval on them, because you're impacting everyone every time you do that, because it's called a protected tax, which means you have to have that tax rate because your bond holders get paid first. So it's a protected tax.
So
Have we confused you even more? It is very.
Probably,
it is-
but-
It is, there's a lot to it.
I guess and maybe Jim can help. Is there something we can, for the long-term health of the library? What legislation or what do we need to, who do we need to corral by the neck or whatever to, I said that publicly.
As
It's an
long as-
ongoing
I
process.
think as long as the tax caps are in place, there's very little room to move. What we've been looking at and for over the last few years is, and so have other libraries and everybody else, is how to increase how do you develop other revenue streams?
Mhm.
Jenny's going to mention a little bit of that tonight in her presentation, but the taxes are set by law, and now with circuit breaker in the Constitution, and that happened under Mitch Daniels,
Mhm.
there is no place to really move. It is what it is. So the only place we might be able to work outside is to pass a referendum, and we talked about that, which is what School Corporation did, and now everybody's complaining about the amount of school taxes because of that referendum. So referendums are a really dicey thing,
Yeah,
but that's another way to get money for capital improvements, not operating, but capital.
great. Okay. I'm through for a while.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, geez.
I do want to leave it open if there's anyone from the public who wishes to comment on the budget. Do we have anyone? I'm asking the screen. It looks like not. We don't have to vote on the budget this month. That is scheduled for next month's meeting. So if there are no public comments, I would accept a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
And I will call the roll. Marvin,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Terry,
Aye.
Ann,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and I also, and we want to thank you, Kelly. You did a great job putting that together for us. Thank you. Next, we'll talk about the contract with Halid and Sons Expert Movers, who are going to move everything from here back to the main library.
They are.
Halid is the same company we use to move us out. And so we asked them to prepare another contract for us, which Mr. Masters has reviewed. And he had some changes. I don't have the final contract, I don't believe, unless Lisa, we got it in the last day or so. But it is in a form that could be approved tonight, since we're going to be moving next month before the board meeting takes place.
Well, I looked at that, the contract, and the changes I think are in red in our board packet. And I believe the total cost is $145,520, which is considerably lower than the move
out.
to here. So are there any questions about moving back to the main library?
I had a question somewhere in the, under scope of work. Exhibit A, it just talks about the local and family history department, but they're doing the whole, they're moving
They're
back.
doing the whole library.
That
Yeah.
just confused me. I thought,
We may not
oh,
have gotten all of, maybe didn't have all that scope in there. We do close for the move on October 21st, and they will be here 7 days a week until they get us moved, the same way they did with the move out. I'm not sure what happened to that, Anne.
okay,
I
was
don't
just
know.
curious.
This is less than the move out because, and it's a not to exceed number because they don't have to break down all the shelves and set the shelves up over there. We have almost all new shelving with a few exceptions. And so that doesn't have to be done. We'll just move it.
Any other questions? With that, I would entertain a motion to approve the contract with Halid and Sons Expert Movers.
So move.
Second,
And I will call the roll. Marvin,
aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Terry.
Aye.
Anne,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and I also approve. Moving to the next item, public service policy change, library hours. I understand Tricia is going to discuss that with us.
Thank you, Christine. This is an exciting time, obviously, for us, and we took the opportunity to think about the hours for the whole system as well as the main library when we were talking about reopening Main. You can see in the document in your packet, there are the new hours. One of the goals was to standardize across the system. We had so many different hours at so many different locations. It was difficult for the patrons to understand when to expect to find us there and when they could come in. So we achieved that for the most part. And we also expanded our hours at the main library from what they were before we closed to going back. Now we'll be open more hours. There's a couple departments that'll be open another day each week that they weren't open before. That's Studio 304 used to be closed on Wednesdays, and now they will be open that day. Also, local and family history will be open on Sundays when we are open during the school year for Sunday. Another thing that we gained from this was the branches will be open more hours than they were before. There's an increase of 8 hours per week at the neighborhood branches and 4 hours per week at the bigger branches. That leaves the small branches, the minis down in North Liberty and Lakeville. We actually cut those a little just because the use at those branches is less at certain times. And so it's not necessary for us to be open the full 8-hour days that the others are open. For the main library, those changes will go into effect the day after our opening, so November 15th. And then for the branches, it would be January 3rd, which is the first open day in 2022. Are there any questions?
I have a comment.
So right now, so if we're opening at 9 o'clock in the morning now,
Yes.
will most people then that perhaps might have come at 9 o'clock now start coming at 8 o'clock, or how?
You mean
how
the
does that-
staff?
Yes. Staff.
Yes, staff will have to come in a little earlier. So there'll be some schedule adjustments. Some people may start at 8:30 and work till 5:30. And it just depends on how much time in advance their department needs to get ready to open and how many of them need to be there for that. You know, it wouldn't be everyone in every department that would have to do that. And that's why we can do this, because we can, stagger it a little bit. Ann?
Yeah, I was so happy to see this because I know when we've done workshops and presentations, that 10 o'clock opening was just always problematic. So
Right.
yay, really happy to see that. And then, so like the closing at 8, but will some of those rooms for presentations have separate entrances and exits and be open later or no?
The whole community learning center will be able to be open later than the library itself. So we have a way to lock down the buildings and keep them separate if we do want to stay open longer in one area.
Okay. Great.
Yes, Terry?
The branches, subjects meeting rooms.
Mhm.
They presently go till 8, well, maybe 7:30. It's moved around a bit.
Mhm.
With the library closing at 7, will these meeting rooms not be available at the branches after 7?
No, they're still available past our closing time. You can, as long as someone from your group is at the building before it is closed,
Okay.
then
same-
your meeting could stay as long as you like.
Okay, same as before, which
Yes.
we did, yes. Lisa helped me out a lot this week, having to not reorganize a few meetings because of the change in that last half hour. Is that, I think it's being resolved, and I appreciate your help. Okay, so,
Yeah,
good.
and we're always willing to work with people. I know sometimes in the past from those early morning meetings, we opened just for that group at 8. You know, it was a challenge to do that at Maine because of the way our meetings were set up, but now it won't be.
Terry, when we looked at our use numbers between 7 and 8 o'clock, the usage fell off so abruptly, and we really wanted those morning hours back. So we're gonna, we'll work with this slate of hours, and our intention is to do it for at least a year, so we have a year's worth of data, and then we'll kind of shake it up and see whether we did the right move. But
I have no concern about that. You guys are following the data. You know what you're doing. I just was concerned about the meeting rooms,
Yeah.
because if they were gonna be cut off at 7, it's really hard to get people to meetings at 6.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. So it sounds like you answered that, and
Good.
that's fine. It's a strange thing. I don't know if any of you run into this, but of all the things we've been through, from, $1 million elevators and this controversy and that, the most times that I have been approached in a not what I would like manner, it's had to do with meeting rooms.
Right.
Mhm.
It's what affects most people, right? It's the hours and
Yeah.
how it
Okay,
affects
great.
their life,
I'm
right?
happy. Thank you.
Yes, yeah.
Do you know what the fiscal impact is going to be? How much is it going to cost us adding these additional hours?
Oh, well, we are increasing staff to staff the main library, but I don't think we're going past the amount of staff we had before we closed. Mhm.
it's gonna be a shifting, Alan. When we went to the schedule that we're on right now, we did it during the recession, and we did it so we could staff with one shift. This is gonna mean a little more, I think, struggling, but we're not planning to hire any additional staff to do it besides what we'd already planned on.
Thank you.
So in terms of security, I think will the security be the same in terms of number of officers or people that, what is security for the
We're
library?
increasing,
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Trish.
we're increasing security and facilities.
Okay,
Just because the size of the main library is bigger and we need them for that. And so I think the branch security that you see will be the same as it has been, or as it was before we closed Maine. They've had a little extra right now while we were closed,
Mhm.
but it'll go back to those pre-closing hours. So the branches should be the same,
Right.
and Maine will have more,
Right.
just because it's a bigger building to patrol.
We actually don't have security at all of our branches, just the ones where we've had, and a lot of times it's when we have 50 kids in a branch after school, you got to have somebody to corral
Of
or
course,
help
yeah,
corral.
right.
And so those officers, that's part of what they do.
I was concerned about, because the library is downtown and where it's located, I was concerned that
Yeah,
you have security, especially in the evenings.
we will have somebody. Yeah. we
Yeah,
will have
they'll be
several.
there till the end
So,
of each day.
so then if somebody is leaving a meeting an hour after the closing time, the security just will be there?
We'll have some security there. We're still working out at the next meeting. you're going to see a revised meeting room policy and event space policy, and we're still kind of putting that together. But I think we'll have to have somebody in the building. Yeah, we can't just not have people. So it'll probably be a security officer.
Anything else? Thank you, Tricia. I will entertain a motion to approve the public service, whatever, which one it was. Yes, the library hour, public service changes, library hours.
Yeah, I move that we approve the new hours proposals set forth in our
Second.
board packet.
Okay, let me call the roll. Marvin,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Terry,
Aye.
Anne,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and I also approve. So next we will have Kara speak on remote work policy changes.
So in 2019, most of you were here for that, you voted for a remote work policy. Somehow we knew we were going to need it in 2020. I don't know how we knew that, but we did. So in that initial policy, which was kind of a pilot, we put a blanket, any staff member could apply and get up to 1 day per week, with the caveat saying that public service staff weren't likely to be approved. We've learned some things during the pandemic when everybody was working remotely, and we'd like to make some of the changes that we saw necessary permanent. So the biggest changes are public service staff. We found over a certain level, the levels that actually work off desk. So they work on programming, they work on scheduling. It's beneficial for them to have at least 4 hours remote work if they're approved. And we found that it doesn't harm the desk schedule. They've been able to work that out. So we'd like to make that change and that specificity written into the policy that they get that max amount. Management and exempt staff from public service, we had always said that they would have, they were likely to be approved, and we've kept them at 1 day per week maximum. The biggest change in the policy is asking to increase the max for non-public service staff to 2 days per week. We found during the pandemic that there are departments that can really benefit from that time away from the rest of the department to really focus and work on what they need to work on. In addition to that, we're proposing to remove the 6-month waiting period for remote work, mostly because those departments that are working 2 days remotely, if someone brand new comes in and there's nobody in the department 1 day a week, that would be difficult for them. So we want them to work with their department in the way that they're working. So any questions about that?
Must have covered it very clearly.
I know when you passed this, sorry, in 2019, some of you did have concerns about whether or not we would be able to do this, but the pandemic, for all of the bad things that happened, showed us that we could indeed do this and do it well. So.
And because of technology, we actually know when people are using their computers for what they're supposed to be using their computers for.
Yes, absolutely. And in addition, something that we've done too is that the managers during the performance reviews, anybody who has been approved, the manager evaluates at that time as well, if they should be allowed to continue. And they can drop at any time in between if there's a problem.
Thank you.
I think it's really interesting that you've learned this about the work, and I find it interesting to think about people doing both. I mean, shifting between having that time off-site and then being on-site. And I don't know that we necessarily would have thought that would be an effective work environment, but apparently it is. So I think it's great.
There are some departments where it works particularly well, and I think that's where we're really headed, like our
Mhm.
collection development department. They
Mhm.
sit in front of a screen a lot of the time and they're selecting and they're reading reviews, and it's all concentrated work. The noise bothers them, so they would be one that could do at least 2 days a week, and that's where we're headed.
My son in Boston worked at home through the pandemic, and he heard from his boss a couple of months ago. He said, I'm not paying these downtown Boston rents anymore. It's pointless. We got one little office if we have to meet clients. But one thing they did I thought was good. They have a regularly scheduled event. I don't even know what they call it when they're all there. Just some FaceTime in case, you know.
I think even during the pandemic, like everyone was working remotely for the library. Every department had a meeting, a time when they would all come together, whether virtually or in person outside. But I think the managers get that it's important for the team to get
Right.
together.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? With that, I would certainly entertain a motion to approve the remote work policy changes.
Would so move.
Second.
Thank you. I will call the roll. Marvin,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Terry, Ann,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and I also approve. Thank you. Thank you, Kara.
Our very first remote working person sitting right over there.
Yes,
Deb,
31 years ago.
seems amazing.
It
but
does.
Yes, and I remember that having a lot of people talking about whether that was a good
That
idea or
was
not.
a
It worked out fine then.
huge discussion. Whether, yeah.
Well, it all worked out. Yeah, seems to be working. Okay, public service policy change, library cards and service charges. Jenny, I understand you will be presenting.
Hello again. So Sarah, Trish, and I have been working on developing a new model for the types of library cards that we offer to the public. We began looking holistically at the library cards we offer in the process of exploring the elimination of fines and fees and what that could look like for our library system. And this led to a discussion on what an ideal framework to govern all of the different types of library cards that we offer, what that could look like. One thing always breeds another. I'm going to present this new model for library cards now and give you some context for why we want to make these changes. These changes will help us prepare to go fine free, and we'll have more details about that facet of our work at a later time. But first, I want to give everyone a little bit of background. Library cards are quintessential. It's a quintessential component of library service. You know, people often, at least we hope, that they carry them around in their wallet, ready to use them whenever they come into the library. And I'm sure many of us remember when we got our first library cards, either as children or as adults. We offer several different types of library cards, and what they represent are the different ways that an individual can either borrow our items or interact with the library. So they just define the relationship between the library and that particular individual. An example that I provided here, just to show the difference between the library cards that we have, a youth access card, for example, allows a child to check out 5 items with no liability. While a homebound patron's card doesn't have that same rule, but instead these individuals can have longer checkout times because they need that longer time in transit for when the materials are getting to them. So each library card is sort of designed to meet the needs of whatever individual is using it or whatever groups of individuals are using that card. So currently, we have multiple different types of library cards. These were created over a long period of time in what I would say is an ad hoc sort of fashion. So they were meant to meet the prevailing needs of the times that they were created. So for example, when we identified the need to provide a card for teachers to be able to check out materials for their classrooms, we created an educator card. We identified a need for youth who needed to be able to check out a card when maybe they didn't have identification on them. So we created the youth access card. So all of these cards were created in a sort of evolutionary way where we identified needs in our community. But as a result, this card model that we currently have does lack cohesive intention. And it can be a little complicated for patrons and staff to implement and to understand. And also because of some of these complications, it can be prone to error in terms of our database. So for all of these reasons, when we had the opportunity to take a look at how we were offering cards and what system we had in place, we decided to take it. So in addition to making sure that we're ready to go find free, we also identified 5 goals for what we wanted to achieve in this process. The first is to expand our ability to retain and engage cardholders. This is always something that's very important to us. We want people to be able to move seamlessly between different card types so that they have a deeper relationship with the library, so that they use us more and get more benefit out of our services. In this case, someone might move more seamlessly from an introductory card, which could be an access card, into one that allows greater levels of access. So we just wanted to make that a little easier for everyone. Another goal was to add value to library cards for residents in our service area. We want to make sure that we are providing the highest level of service for the people who are living in the areas that we serve. We also wanted to simplify the framework and process for public service staff. When you're working the service desk, you're encountering questions of all sorts. And we wanted to make it a little easier for staff to be able to help patrons sign up for library cards, and also for the individuals getting a library card to understand, you know, what loan rules or what benefits they get out of any particular card. We also wanted to retain a second chance option for individuals whose cards might be unusable because of lost or stolen items. And this really comes out of the fine free discussion, because if we go fine free, how can we still have a way for people to come back to the system, even if something happens to their card and they do lose an item and it goes into collection? How can we provide them with a pathway to get back into library use? And finally, something that we've already discussed a little bit today is we're exploring an alternate funding model. And in the face of revenue cuts in both the future and in the now, we're looking for ways to create new revenue streams. And this will, of course, help sustain the library's finances in the future. All right, so this is getting into the meat and potatoes of it. So with our new system that we've devised, there are 4 large buckets, and each of these buckets would contain different types of cards. These are just sort of the conceptual model that the different card types would fall into. The first bucket is full service cards, and these are available to residents who live in our service area, and they provide enhanced services for these patrons. And there's some notes in here that probably are a little bit too fine-grained of detail, and we're happy to answer, Sarah and Trish and I are happy to answer questions about this, but these are your basic adult, teen, and juvenile or children's cards. The second category of cards is the guest card. These are available to individuals who do not live in our service area. So they would include reciprocal cards, plaque cards, which are public library access cards, and the fee card for non-residents. We are exploring a tiered cost structure applied to these cards. So certain cards like the plaque card and the fee card already have a cost associated with them that is set by the state. So we're looking at how we could tier this for all of our guest cards. And this would be where the alternate revenue stream would come into play. These cards would retain all of the current loan rules. So very little of what their current access is would change. There might be some small tweaks here and there as we work through the process, but in general, the card that they have is the card that they would get in this new system. The third bucket is the access card. And these names, we'll admit, these are our placeholder names. So we haven't finalized, we haven't done the word smithing on any of this yet. Access cards are those that offer special accommodations or limited liability for residents in our service area once again. So these include the youth and adult access card. Our homebound patrons would fall into this category, and then also educator cards, because those are specially created to serve the classroom environment. And finally, the fourth category is staff and board cards. And these offer a special incentive for service to the library. And they're available to current and retired staff and board members, including those who live in our service area and outside of our service area, because we know often when you retire or go off the board, you might not stay in South Bend. You may end up in Florida or Arizona or somewhere like that. All right, Rachel. So these are just really broad brush strokes of the different rules that would apply to each of these categories. You'll notice at the top of each of them, they're all fine-free. So that is our eventual goal, is to get to that point. For full service cards, we intend to increase the limit on digital materials so that we're increasing the amount of digital access available to residents in our service area. We're also adding in auto renewals, and this would allow people to just more easily continue to check out the books that they have. And this would also apply to all of the different categories. And as well, we plan on continuing the $5 a day free faxing, scanning, and printing for individuals in our service area. So we know that there has been a huge demand for this across our branches, and we want to make sure that we're able to still offer this to, especially to the people that live in the neighborhoods that we serve. Guest cards, the major change is there would be some limited access to digital materials. We're exploring what that might look like. And then they would continue to pay what our standard fee is for faxing, scanning, and printing. And then annual fees would apply to these cards. Access cards, the rules vary depending on the groups that these cards are meant to serve. But the more important point on this is that we're looking into a simplified verification process. So now when you come in to get a library card, you need to have proof of identity, forms of mail to show your address. And we want to find a way to make it a little bit easier to decrease barriers in terms of people being able to get their library card if they're not able to produce all of those forms of identification. So there are ways that we are looking into that we could just do that based on someone's address that they would be able to give us. And that would expand access enormously, especially for people who might want to come in just to obtain that free faxing, scanning, and printing. If we could get them a library card in addition to utilizing that service, it just opens up a world of possibilities that we can provide further services for those people. And then, oh, that's okay. Sorry, I know it looks like I was signaling you, but I don't want to forget staff and board cards. Again, this is pretty much the same, but we're looking into increasing some of the limits in order to make it a little bit of an incentive for our staff and board members. Thank you. So you may be wondering, why now? There are three big reasons. One is that the dissolution of the cluster allowed us to customize our database a little bit more. So we had the freedom to be able to make some of these changes, which we could never make before. The opening of Main Library, as with so many things that I present to you about, has provided us an opportunity to make a big change. It's just the right time to evaluate what we're doing and making sure that we're envisioning our services and our library cards and how we present ourselves to the public in the best possible way. And then finally, as I've mentioned, this exploration of how we could go find free really led to a reevaluation of all our library cards. We just had many discussions on the cards that we're offering and what should continue in the future and what model really made sense. So that's why now. And then I will end on what we hope the outcomes to be. So the primary one is that we would eliminate fines for all library card holders. So effectively go fine free. We would continue to provide free printing, faxing, and scanning for all service area residents, making ourselves fee-free for all in-service residents. And then enable patrons to keep their materials longer through auto renewals. And I think lastly, but not least, is to build our card holder base in our service area by expanding the services that mean the most to these individuals. So it'll allow us really to focus our efforts on making sure that we're providing the highest level of service for the people in our neighborhoods. All right, so that is my presentation. I'm happy to answer questions, and if I cannot answer them, I am happy to direct you to Sarah or Trish.
Well, this does not call for any action on our part today.
Mhm.
This is just our first introductory meeting. So we'll just be looking forward to hearing more from you over the next few months. Are there comments?
No, I have a, so I was one of those library users who I think probably contributed a huge amount to some building. I mean, it should probably be named after me from all my fines. It's one thing I like about the digital, it's just like, it's gone. But how, I just don't quite understand how you cannot, how do you know people will bring things back? And how do you know, how are you going to do that? I'm just really curious about that.
I can give it a stab and then everyone can review. Lisa, do you want to?
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. That makes makes a lot of sense.
I don't know how much you follow library trends, but this is a huge trend in public libraries.
Yeah.
And I have waited fairly deliberately because for a number of reasons. Part of it was that if you're going for a bond issue and you are telling everyone that you need money and then to give up revenue seems counterintuitive. But we've been sort of holding off until this point. The other thing that's happened that Jenny didn't really go into is that our revenue on all these things has plummeted because as people use digital access, they don't pay fines and fees anymore.
Yeah.
So we've watched our fine revenue go down and we've been able to sustain services without any degradation with that loss in fine revenue, which is what other libraries have found as well. We're a fraction of what we used to bring in overdue fees. And then I also, Jenny was nicer about it than, but to address the fear that people feel about having to pay library fines. I've talked to people who've said, I can't go to the library because I'm just afraid I'm going to be late. And what will you think? And it's amazing to me that, you know, we're all used to paying the fines if we have the fines. But for some people, it's really a barrier. What libraries have found that have gone fine free is that people come back to the library who haven't come for years. And if we could achieve that, why wouldn't we try this? So
I'm also wondering about cost effectiveness. How much does it cost staff to have to pursue collecting fines?
That's a good point.
And what's the relationship when the librarian becomes a fine collector, an enforcer? I can see on so many different levels that I know that there are communities that stopped giving parking tickets because it costs them more to hire somebody to enforce the parking fines.
There's some truth to that. I think also we've taken the approach for the last probably 2 or 3 years that we want to work with people. And so when somebody comes in with a boatload of fines, we'll negotiate and we negotiate almost every one of them down. Lost materials are a little different. A loss, according to the state, is considered, you know, theft of property. So we're still working that out, but the second chance card would still work for us.
We're talking late, not lost.
We're talking late, not lost. Yes.
presuming this ends up happening, and there's plenty of good reasons for it too. I am wondering, how it doesn't do any good unless people know about it. How do we publicize this?
We will sing it to the skies when we do this. I would hope that we may be asking you at the next board meeting to approve this, but we really wanted you to think about it and ask questions. And really, I mean, we've been thinking about it for months and months, but you haven't had a chance to do that. But I think it's going to be huge. We've also been watching what other libraries have done who've gone fine free. And there are lots of ways to roll that out. Jenny's team, I have no doubt, is going to do a great job with it. But people will know. It'll be big because it will be one of the centerpieces of what we do.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago, this topic sort of beginning to be talked about. So I know it's been out there.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that you sort of waited to see, give the other libraries that went first, how did it work? What happened? And I think that's really good.
Some of you know I follow, there's a list of the 37 largest libraries because it goes by population, and we all exchange information all the time. 2 years ago, only 1 or 2 of them was fine free, and it's most of them now. We've just waited because of everything else we had going on. So.
Thank you, Jenny. Our last action agenda is the library board resolution to declare excess withdrawal library materials. Might I hear a motion?
On behalf of Christine, I move.
Second.
Thank you. Let me call a roll.
Could you entertain a question first?
Oh, I will entertain questions. Any questions?
Yes.
Okay, Terry, there's a question.
The extensive list of computers, they say, it says donated. I ask where they were donated to. I'm just curious.
Sarah or Lisa? While she's looking, we have donated them to several nonprofits in the area during COVID. St. Margaret's House, Our Lady of the Road. It was social service agencies for the most part, but Lisa's got the.
I'm all for it. I just would like
Yeah.
to know where they went. And the second part of that question, does this leave us with less devices? Or
No,
smaller
these
devices?
were devices that had aged out for the most part, and we've just, with main library coming online, we did a massive computer order. You remember, you approved it
Yes, I
a
do.
month or two ago.
Okay. All right. Any more questions? Thank you, Terry. With that, I will call a roll. Marvin,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Terry,
Aye.
Anne,
Hi.
John,
Aye.
and I also approve. And I thank you for the motion, for my motion. Is there any other business coming before the board? Not that
I'd
I'm.
like to
a-
bring one thing up.
Okay.
We talked a lot about income sources. I don't know if all of you are familiar with Amazon Smile. I just ran across that about a year ago, and you go in there through a little bit different route, and you can designate somebody getting, it's a very small percentage, but of everything. I think the last I saw, the library got maybe $500-600 from, a lot of people, but it costs nothing. And I wish more people knew about it. Figure spend the same money anyway.
Thank you.
You could Google it.
I think did you get a report on your own Amazon Smile donation? Because I think I just got something from Amazon that said, you just did, your unit of choice just got this.
Yes, I
I-
saw that.
I
but it
must have
doesn't-
bought a
but
lot.
Not by individual. I have no idea whether I had a penny in there or $1.
Thank you. Were there any visitors who requested to address the board? Okay, none. News and education items?
You
No-
have a note from Nancy as a thank you.
Yes. And please, if you haven't taken the time to read the Stern article, it's excellent. And with that, I will say that our next library board meeting will be at the Center Township Branch Library on Monday, October 21st, first at 4:15, 25th at 4:15, And that will be at 1150 East Kern Road on the south end of South Bend. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
And I will call the roll. Marvin,
Aye.
I lost my roll list. Okay, Marvin, Alan,
Aye.
Terry.
Aye.
Ann,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and I also approve. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you all for your time.